Welcome back to Tears for Fears. I'm your host, Megan Shoup. You can follow me on Twitter at Megs08DFS, and you are looking at my COVID uniform that I've worn pretty much all week long. And since I'm still recovering, I figured stay comfortable and wear it for today's episode. Plus, I think everybody's in jammies this week pretty much. So I've got my Washington jammies and I'm ready to go. But I was very sorry to miss last week's Christmas Tears episode, but COVID just laid me out. So for anybody who has been going through it through the holidays or is currently going through it, just know I'm very sorry. It sucks and I feel your pain. So why don't we try to look for a distraction with NFL and NFL DFS and try to make some good picks here. So what we're going to do in today's show, what we always do, we're going to go tier by tier and find our favorite plays. We're going to go over to Run the Sims and help us make some decisions. And then after you watch this show and after you use Run the Sims, you could go over to fanspeak.com and check out my tier simulator that has my favorite plays plugged in. So between those three resources, hopefully you can make some really good tiers lineups. So with that, let's get right into week 17. I know we usually look back before we look ahead, but I'm just throwing last week in the trash and I'm looking ahead. And there's a couple things to look ahead at. First, the NFL changed the COVID protocols, and I can't speak to all the logistics of that, but we're all aware of it. And what you have to be is just aware of news on Saturday night and Sunday morning. The people that pay most attention to the news are going to be the ones with the most leverage. So just really pay attention to who's in and who's out on Saturday night and Sunday morning so that you can make your best lineups, because news now is more important than ever. The second thing is, I think all of us as fantasy players or analysts wish there was some kind of COVID symptomatic tracker for the guys that test positive. There's not. We're not privy to that information. But it's tough because some of these guys come off the COVID list and they're fine. And then some guys are clearly not 100%, or playing, very hampered and not playing as well. So I'm saying that to say that as I go through these tiers and try to find my core plays, I'm not going to play a guy coming off the COVID list, but I am going to have some more reservations. So, take that for what it's worth. That's how I'm handling it. And now let's get into week 17 picks. In tier 1, we have Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, and Patrick Mahomes. And like I've done in the past, any of these guys are a scary fade, so I'm not going to fade any of them. I'm going to have exposure to all four. I'm going to have the least exposure to Murray. I just think Dallas's defense is playing really well right now. And, his running has been inconsistent. And so I'm just the most nervous actually about Murray. So I'll have the most exposure to Mahomes, Allen, and Brady. Really, I really like all three of them, to be quite honest. It's very, very close, and I almost really am going to have equal exposure. But if you're going to make me pick one, I'm going to say Josh Allen. Now, that's if there's not a lot of snow. I know there's a lot of weather forecasts to pay attention to. We've got so much to pay attention to. COVID news, injury news, weather news. We got to stay on top of all of it. So there's a chance for snow in Buffalo. Just we want to make sure, obviously, the winds aren't too high. There's not an insane amount of snow. As long as weather isn't too bad, I think Josh Allen is my favorite play because he gives us that best floor ceiling combo, and he's going up against a juicy matchup against the Falcons. So for that reason, as of now, Josh Allen is my tier 1 play. In tier 2, we have Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, and Stephon Diggs. And in this tier, I'm going to have exposure to most of these guys, except I am probably going to fade or have a little exposure to Deebo Samuel. It's really just because of the quarterback situation. If he's playing with Trey Lance, I just don't know what the trickle-down effects are going to be for the 49ers receivers. So I'm going to rotate through the other guys, but my favorite play is Cooper Kupp. He's usually my favorite play in tier 2 because he's the king of fantasy this year. And now he's playing a depleted and very weak Ravens secondary. So for that reason, Cooper Kupp is my tier 2 play. In tier 3, we have Austin Eckler, Mark Andrews, Alvin Kamara, Keenan Allen, and Jamar Chase. And I'm going to fade Eckler and Kamara here. Eckler is coming off the COVID list, and I just don't know his status. I also think this is going to be a really kind of slow-paced game. And Kamara, even with Taysom Hill back, I am a little skeptical he can hit his ceiling here. So that makes my core plays Andrews, Allen, and Chase. And with Allen, I think he's a safer floor play. I'm not sure he can hit his ceiling, but I will have some exposure in case nobody hits their ceiling here. But my two favorite plays definitely are Mark Andrews and Jamar Chase. I'm a little more nervous, weirdly enough, if Lamar Jackson plays with Andrews than if one of the backups play, because Andrews seems to be getting more targets and better targets with the backup. So I'm going to monitor that situation. But to help me decide, I went over to run the Sims. And as you can see on the rangefinder tool, I plugged in Mark Andrews and Jamar Chase, and Andrews does have the higher win rate. So we'll monitor the quarterback situation, and I like both of these guys, but for tier 3, Mark Andrews is my play. In tier 4, we have Joe Mixon, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Ezekiel Elliott, CeeDee Lamb, and A.J. Brown. And I'm going to fade Kittle and Elliott here. Kittle, again, I have concerns about the trickle-down effects of Lance as the quarterback, and Elliott, it's easier to get points in the air against the Cardinals than on the ground. So my core plays are Mixon, Kelce, Lamb, and A.J. Brown. Honestly, if Kelce wasn't just coming off the COVID list, he'd probably hands down be my favorite play. But those 4 are my favorite, or my core plays. And I was going to have A.J. Brown as my favorite play. Just his targets per route run are one of the highest in the league, and they really need to lean on him given their situation with injuries and guys on the COVID list. But he missed practice on Thursday, so I just want to monitor that. So with that said, for right now, Joe Mixon is my favorite play because he's got a good matchup against the Chiefs. And as long as he's getting the targets too, he really has the potential for that ceiling. So for that reason, at this point, Joe Mixon is my tier 4 play. And in tier 5, we're back to quarterbacks with Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, and Russell Wilson. I'm going to keep it easy here, guys. My favorite plays, or my core plays, are the 3 quarterbacks in the highest total, highest pace games, and that is Stafford, Prescott, and Burrow. So those are my core plays. Love all 3 of them. Think all 3 have a potential for a ceiling. I'm going to go with a bounce back spot here for Matthew Stafford. I talked about Kupp and going against that depleted, very weak Ravens secondary, and we've got the same matchup here for Stafford. So I really think he could have a nice bounce back spot here against the Ravens. We saw what Burrow and other quarterbacks recently have done to that Ravens defense. I think Stafford can do the same thing. So for that reason, Stafford is my tier 5 play. In tier 6, we have Antonio Brown, T. Higgins, Cordarrelle Patterson, Jalen Waddle, David Montgomery, and Damian Harris. The only fade here I have is Patterson. Without the targets lately, he just has a very scary floor. So my core plays are Antonio Brown, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, David Montgomery, and Damian Harris. I'm really going to rotate through all these guys and have a lot of exposure to all of them. I really think they're all kind of in good spots. I will say, I believe both running backs, Montgomery and Harris, you can get at much lower ownership. But my favorite play here is Antonio Brown. Just like he's priced too low on DraftKings, I think he's priced too low in tiers. I think he should be a higher tier given his situation. Now, he did miss practice on Thursday, so pay attention to that. But as long as he's good to go, Antonio Brown is my tier 6 play. In tier 7, we have Tyler Lockett, Hunter Renfrow, Amari Cooper, DK Metcalf, Rob Gronkowski, Javonte Williams, Devonta Smith, and Ronald Jones II. And in this tier, I'm going to fade the Seattle guys and Devonta Smith. I may sprinkle in a little bit of Williams and Renfrow, but my core plays are Cooper, Gronkowski, and Ronald Jones. I think all 3 of those have a good floor ceiling combo, and I really couldn't decide. So I went over to run the Sims, and I compared both. Well, first I compared Jones and Gronkowski. Jones had the higher win rate. I did the same with Jones and Cooper, and Jones still has the higher win rate. I think he's got a great floor ceiling combo here against the Jets. So for that reason, Ronald Jones is my tier 7 play. In tier 8, we have Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, Darren Waller, Terry McLaurin, Melvin Gordon III, Chase Edmonds, Saquon Barkley, and Rashad Penny. Darren Waller is out on the COVID list. Antonio Gibson seems very questionable. I have no interest in Gordon or Barkley, so that makes my core plays Jacobs, McLaurin, Edmonds, and Penny. And here's how I'm going to play this. For Jacobs and McLaurin, I think you can get an ownership discount here in tier 8, and they could potentially hit their ceiling just as much as these other guys could. It just might be a little less likely. But if you want to take an ownership stand, Jacobs and McLaurin, I'll have some exposure to them. My 2 favorite plays, though, are Chase Edmonds and Penny. Here's the deal, though. We don't know on the Connor Edmonds who's going to be active. If both are active, I definitely like Penny as my favorite play. If Connor's out and Edmonds is in, then Edmonds is my favorite play. I made this mistake on Saturday, on Christmas Day. I ate up all of the, I believe, tier 5 where Chase Edmonds was in, thinking that Connor was definitely going to play. Then he got ruled out, and I could barely pivot onto Edmonds, and that was a huge mistake. I literally lost out on a 1v1 from basically tying in a tiers tournament on Christmas Day. So that was very, very frustrating. I don't want to make that same mistake again. I want to leave that 4 p.m. eligibility in case Connor is ruled out. So pay attention to all that news. So basically how it goes for me is I'm going to mostly leave that 4 p.m. spot open. If Connor is out, Chase Edmonds is my favorite play. If Connor is in, then Penny is my favorite play. That'll do it for this week's Tears for Fears. What do you guys think of my lineup? Please let me know in the comments section, and also let me know your favorite tier 4 play. That's the tier I was really struggling the most with. So before you guys get out of here, please be sure to like this episode. Of course, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. Head over to Run the Sims so they can help you make tiers decisions. And then head over to fanspeak.com and check out my tiers simulator. It's got some of these favorite and core plays already plugged in for you, so it can help give you some lineup suggestions. So we've got tons of resources for you so we can make great week 17 tiers lineups. So let's go make some money, and I'll see you back here next week.